When I wrote the mobile wave, the observation was software networks are dematerializing everything in the world. They're dematerializing money and identity and everything you can hold in your hand, the photograph. And so the conclusion of the mobile wave was the world's going to change. The networks, Google's an information network, Facebook's a social network, Apple's a mobile network, Amazon's a retail network. They're going to eat the world. Well, the conclusion is buy Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Google. I wrote the book. Nobody read the book. And, anybody could have done it. If you had bought any of those companies in the past decade, you couldn't lose money. So it made me conclude a couple of things. One thing, if you want to make money in the tech era, you find the dominant digital network, the one that's worth 100 billion, that's crushed everybody. You can't buy MySpace. You might hit BlackBerry or MySpace or Yahoo, or something like that. If you buy too soon, you might miss it. But after it's $100 billion and the market is decided, Apple's the winner, Google's the winner, Facebook's the winner, Amazon's the winner. And it was pretty obvious Amazon was the winner in 2013. Everybody on Wall Street said, what is this stupid company? They don't make any money. We don't buy into it. And they would sell you Amazon for $300. But you could have bought it. You could buy all those things and you would have got a 10x, 20x gain on it. And you just wait until the 99% of the world that disagrees with you, that's cynical and skeptical and ignorant, and they don't understand it and they're afraid of it, as it gradually dawns on them that Google's an information network, Facebook's a social network, Apple's a mobile network, Amazon's a retail network, Microsoft's an enterprise software network. When you finally figure it out, you're like, oh, these guys can serve up 1 billion people for a nickel. Their variable cost is zero. They've got overwhelming, crushing advantages. My company didn't invest in it. 2020 came, and I swore to myself, if I ever saw this again, I wasn't going to write a book. I was going to buy as much of that thing as I could personally, as much of that thing as I could corporately, and then I was just going to tweet about it. I mean, in the early days of Bitcoin, Bitcoin's like an open source project. There's no company behind it. It's an emergent phenomena in cyberspace. And as it emerged, the early days, it was very uncertain and scary and complicated. And so how will the IRS tax it? Will the government ban it? Will it be illegal to hold it? The early exchanges were failing. Mt. Gox failed. The early use cases were Silk Road. The early question of, is it a security or not, right? You went through all of these tests for Bitcoin. It could have been destroyed because it was banned. It could have been destroyed because it was hijacked by bad exchanges. It could have been destroyed because it was forked. Everybody said, well, either someone else is going to copy it or the government will ban it. Over the last 8 years, what happened is it was copied. It's the winner of the crypto war. So how do you get comfortable with it? Well, after it's been attacked 6,500 times by clones and they've all failed, and when it emerged to be 95% of all of the proof of work networks, like 95% of all the monetary energy in the crypto asset space is on the Bitcoin network, then it's Facebook, it's not MySpace. So we had to watch it get to a point of maturity where it's seasoned. And we had to watch all of these bad exchanges failed, and all the bad actors failed, and we had to watch the development of a regulatory apparatus. So now you have KYC regulation on the exchanges in the U.S. You have clarity with regard to how it's taxed. You have clarity with regard to what it is and isn't. I think people are starting to understand it's not a currency. It's not a payment network. It's a bank in cyberspace that allows billions of people to store their money. It gives them a simple, straightforward, affordable, secure savings account for people that can't set up their own hedge fund and don't know and can't get into a hedge fund, and they just want to put their money in a bank. You know, the politicians and the country has destroyed the savings account over the past 30 years. When I was a kid, you put your money in a savings account, get 5% interest, and everybody believed that the money was going to be more valuable in the future. You wouldn't lose your money. And that option's been deprived. And so Bitcoin has emerged from casino gambling, scary, to the savings account or savings and loan at the end of the universe.
I think that the rest of crypto takes a shortcut, right? The shortcut is issuing an unregistered security. There really isn't an example that I can think of any kind of smart contract network or proof of stake or crypto network that competes with Bitcoin that didn't take the shortcut of an unregistered security. They're not decentralized. Look, the issue with ETH is, if you want a decentralized network, you have to actually install a protocol, and it has to run unmolested, unmodified for 5 to 10 years before you can conclude that it is decentralized and censorship resistant. And ETH hasn't even got there yet. The clock on ETH won't start until after. The problem with ETH is, after the merge, they've still left all sorts of questions. What's the issuance schedule going to be for the next 1,000 years? What are the staking rules? What are there's so much, there's such an ambitious technology agenda that the protocol never stops mutating. And the problem with an ever mutating DNA structure is you generally end up with a monstrosity, right? You can't keep mutating the protocol for obvious reasons. So ETH isn't really something that you could have an opinion on yet, because they haven't stopped mutating it. If I had to have an opinion on what I see in front of me, what you see is this is something that was sold as an ICO to the public. The Ethereum Foundation controls it. It's an investment contract, right? It's been hard forked multiple times, and the hard forks aren't just hard forks to fix a fatal bug. They're hard forks that change the underlying monetary protocol, and the protocol keeps materially changing, and it is never stabilized. Right now, you've got an ETH mining constituency, and every year for the past 5 years, they've had a difficulty bomb to destroy it, and they keep putting it off. Well, who's they? The miners don't want to destroy themselves. So who's controlling the network? Not the miners, right? There's a small group of developers that control what the network is, and that's a company. It's a software company, and ETH is an equity, and they've sold it to the general public, and they keep changing the protocol. Hard forks are just software upgrades that are mandatory. So it's not a decentralized network. It's not a commodity. There's no reasonable person that understands the law or ethics could conclude that Ethereum is a commodity, right? You can't. Gary Gensler doesn't think it's a commodity. You can read his videos on it, right? It passes the Howey test as an investment contract. The question you got to ask yourself is, who makes the decisions and what's the basis they make the decision, right? It doesn't help to vote on these things either, by the way. Like, if you vote on them, companies vote on things. If the shareholders get a vote, that makes it a security, right? The only way to establish a commodity in cyberspace is someone has to follow Satoshi's example. The example is, you create the software, you give it to the world with no economic motive, right? And the protocol is set forever, and no one changes it. So if you're going to change it, like, you could justify fixing a bug. But if someone hard forked Bitcoin to be 42 million coins instead of 21 million coins, or they hard forked it to change the issuance schedule, right? All of a sudden, you've centralized it. You reset the clock. It looks like something which is controlled by an entity, and now you have to wait a decade to figure out whether or not it's stabilized. And so I think the real issue with ETH is, a decade after they finish changing it and screwing with it, you can have an opinion on it. But it doesn't look to me like they'll stop hard forking it for the next 3 years. Like the plan is to keep hard forking and hard forking. I'll give you a question. You stake your ETH. Okay, well, what's the yield schedule on the staked ETH for the next decade? And then when can you get your staked ETH out?